We do begin with breaking news. What began as a quiet vigil has taken over the streets of downtown Nashville.
You are taking a live look right now from Sky 5 HD, flying over. Let's see where we are right now. I-24, I believe, near LP Field. Now, the group has shut down part of the interstate tonight. Look at the traffic backed up there. And this is for the second time tonight. I think the Preds had a game going on downtown, and some of the fans there worried about getting out of the game. We can tell you, though, the crowd has grown smaller as the hours have gone by here tonight.
This, of course, follows last night's grand jury decision in Missouri to not indict Officer Darren Wilson for the death of Michael Brown.
And as we've been showing you all day long, people in several cities have taken to the streets and, yes, the interstates to protest. Again, the group here in Nashville is on the interstate once again this hour. Yeah,
let's go right now to News Channel 5's Chris Cannon, who's been on the ground with demonstrators for about 3 hours now. Chris, the atmosphere out there, I imagine, is pretty tense at times, especially on a busy interstate, right?
Actually, Roy, it's been peaceful this entire time. Again, this started at 7 o'clock this evening at the CJC and wound its way down 3rd Avenue to 5th Avenue, back to the CJC, and then over the river and onto the interstate here. Take a look now. You can see everyone is in the middle of the interstate on both sides of Interstate 24, representing the 4.5 hours that Mike Brown laid in the street in Ferguson, Missouri, back in August. This is, I believe, the 3rd time that they have done this around the protest route that they have taken this evening here. This group is much smaller. At one point, we estimate about 500 people were part of this protest as it wound its way through the streets of downtown Nashville. Around 9 o'clock at Shelby and Interstate Drive there by LP Field, they had one last time that they sat down as a full group, and then they made the decision to break up, and half of the group decided that it was time to leave, and the other half crossed back over the interstate and into the James Casey homes, the public housing just off the interstate in the East Nashville area. They marched through the Casey homes, then back onto Shelby Avenue, and then Shelby Avenue back down here onto the interstate here. We're right between the Shelby Avenue exit and the James Robertson exit. The interstate has been shut down now this time for about 15 minutes, going on 20 minutes now that it has been shut down. And as you can imagine, that's causing a traffic backup with everyone trying to pass through the city at this time. And again, this was not the first time that they shut down the interstate this evening.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
And that is the protesters in the middle of the interstate the first time. That is when they came up on the interstate. Now, again, you have to keep this understanding. This is something that was planned to be a vigil. This was a vigil that was supposed to be outside the CJC that started at 7 o'clock this evening. From there, it turned into a protest. And then it had turned into a march, and that march went all through the streets of downtown Nashville. And we talked to an organizer a short time ago, and she said the march was never part of the plan.
The intention was to do a candlelight vigil, but the organizers and myself, we realized that there could definitely be a chance people wanted to move and to express their feelings with their feet. So we did have this in mind, and we kind of just responded to the crowd and see where they were at, and we followed their lead.
And you can see now the protest still on both sides of the interstate in between Shelby Avenue and James Robertson Parkway in East Nashville, just outside of LP Field. And you can also see the traffic. The traffic has been shut down now for about 20 minutes, and really those protesters came down the exit ramp, and police just stopped the traffic in time to let them get onto the interstate. Now, here's another thing we need to bring up. This entire time, Metro Police have just been there. They've just been watching. They were not aware of this was going to happen. They had no idea that this was going to take place all throughout the streets of downtown Nashville. The entire route, they followed these protesters quietly, watching what they did, shutting down streets as they went. And as you can see now, protesters are getting up after the 4.5 minutes that they did lay here on the interstate, representing the 4.5 hours that Mike Brown laid on the street in Ferguson, Missouri. What the next plan is here, no one knows. It really has been something that has been going as we move along here. That is when they make up what they're going to do. Again, the organizers didn't know it was going to be this long of a protest. The organizers didn't know it was going to go up on the interstate. But here we are on the interstate for the second time right now. They did know they were going to go live at 10 o'clock, and they did sit out here with the purpose of going live at 10 o'clock because they knew they would get this time on the news. But again, you can see Metro Police just standing there, calmly watching, keeping peace. Really has been a peaceful protest the entire time, with similar chants to this right now going on throughout the entire parade route. Again, this has been going on for the last 3 hours. Many of them holding flags, others holding posters, but most just chanting as they made their way through the streets of downtown Nashville. And you can hear them chanting now, "We are Mike Brown." Again, we are standing right in the middle of the interstate.
I know it's a little bit difficult to hear what Chris is saying over the chanting, but in case you weren't able to hear, he said the protesters, obviously police are allowing them to take over the interstate there for 4.5 minutes in symbolism of the 4.5 hours that they say that Michael Brown lay in the streets on the night he was shot and killed in Ferguson, Missouri. Obviously, officers are working with the protesters. At some point, though, this has to end. There are safety issues with having people laying on the interstate, chanting on the interstate, protesting on the interstate, especially when there's a concern about ambulances that might need to get through, and fire trucks, and someone with a medical emergency on their way to the hospital. So a lot of safety concerns, and something that really needs to be top priority right now.
And real quick, Chris, if you can hear us, it seems like police have really worked with this group and blocked the streets for them to keep them safe. Is that correct?
Rory, they worked from the very beginning outside of the CJC where this vigil was supposed to happen originally. Metro Police had hot chocolate, coffee, and water for the demonstrators. They also had a porta potty that was brought out there and immediately shut down the inbound lane of James Robertson Parkway to give them more room. But as you heard the organizers say, they never really planned that this was going to be a march, but what they decided was once they got a feel for the crowd and if they wanted to leave and start to move, that's what they did, and then that's when that started. And again, this started, I guess it left the CJC around 7:20 this evening, went all the way down 3rd Avenue, walked from 3rd to 5th on Broadway, back up 5th Avenue, all the way to Gay Street, from Gay Street to James Robertson. Then they went back to the CJC and they rallied there for a bit of a time, and then that decision was made to cross the river and go down to East Nashville. So they went over the James Robertson Bridge, over the Cumberland River, and then they turned right on Interstate Drive, and that's when police were starting to understand that perhaps they were going to go onto the interstate. Now, there was some tension there at first. Police hadn't said anything to them the entire time they were walking through the streets of downtown Nashville, but they tried to convince them not to go up on the interstate. Obviously, they did not listen, so police got up there as quickly as possible to close the interstate and make it safe for the protesters to go up there. They closed both sides of the interstate just outside of LP Field. That lasted about 10 minutes. Then they walked down back to Shelby Avenue, up the on-ramp there, and then over to East Nashville, Rory.
Well, do you know, Chris, how long they plan to let this continue? Because we have a great image tonight from Sky 5 overlooking. You can see literally thousands of cars are now backed up on the interstate. And we're hoping that no one has a serious medical problem or an emergency and that they need to get through. So is there any word on when we're going to get the interstate back open?
Well, Jessica, they got on the interstate around 9:45, so they've been out here just about 25 minutes now. Again, there really is no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. They're kind of just going by the seat of their pants and taking it as it comes. And they're down here now, and they did know that 10 minutes till 10 o'clock. If they waited that 10 minutes, they were going to be live on the 10 o'clock news, and that's just what they did. So you can see them now. They're kind of talking. I can't hear exactly what they're saying. So this might be the time for them to get off the interstate. That might be the decision they're making now. But again, they still have to walk the interstate. It's a good probably 1/5 of a mile to the exit ramp, so the interstate's going to be closed down for some time even after they decide to disperse and make their way out.